Are you looking for a new whiskey adventure? Then climb in and buckle up. Get ready for one hell of a ride on the Whiskey Trip podcast with your host, Big Chief. Join in as he and his guests explore whiskey and dive into whiskey stories from around the world. Now here's your host, Big Chief.
Folks, you know, here on the Whiskey Trip, we celebrate more than just the pour in our glass. We celebrate heritage, tradition, and the stories that make this country what it is. That's why I'm proud to tell you about our friends at the Heritage Flag Company. These aren't just flags, they're handcrafted works of art built from whiskey and bourbon barrels that once held the spirit we all love. Every cut, every nail, every burn mark tells a story of patience and craftsmanship. Just like the whiskey we sip, these flags are bold, timeless, and full of character. Whether you hang one in your home bar, your man cave, or gift it to a veteran or first responder, a heritage flag isn't just decor. It's a statement. It says you believe in freedom, tradition, and the legacy we pass down. So saddle up, whiskey family, and head over to theheritageflag.com. Use code WhiskeyTrip10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Let them know Big Chief sent you. Because just like your favorite pour, the Heritage Flag Company is made to be shared, honored, and remembered. Now let's get on to the show. Hey, it's old Big Chief, and yeah, you're taking another ride on a whiskey trip. And folks, this week, I get to go back up to the Great Lakes where I served on a heavy icebreaker, and I get to visit with Dancing Goat Distillery. I got their owners, their founders on right now with me. I got Nicholas Maas and Tom Maas. And I'm excited to talk to you guys and introduce my listeners and my viewers to Dancing Goat Distillery. And you guys just got this new lineup that came out. I poured some of it right here, the straight bourbon whiskey. That's what's in my glass right here. Tell me what's in this before we really get into the conversation. What's in this glass right here right now?
This is Stillman Sonder. It's a 10-year aged 21% rye from MGP. This inventory is really special because it was primarily aged inside of Andean oak. That's an inventory segment that my father bought for our company from a friend who passed away. Their family didn't feel like they could leverage the brand. And so we bought it after the death of the patriarch. We brought that inventory in and we refinished it in a series of rebarreling tests over the course of a couple of years. And so it's actually in your glass right now is cumulative age, 10-year age stated, 21% rye from MGP with it's a 4-part blend, one of the New Indians, and then 3 parts double oak. So that's the exact one that you're tasting.
Man. So this is it Indian oak?
The Andean oak is the primary aging vessel, and a lot of this, 3/4 of the blend is double oaked on top of that. So the really cool things that are interesting about this bourbon, when we were blending it, we were going for sticks and berries. We said we wanted to have nuance. That's the berries. We wanted something that was rare in bourbon, but also really appealing, the fruit notes. And we wanted to be definitively a bourbon. That's the sticks. The inventory we started with was all berries and pretty weak bodied, which is why we ended up double oaking a lot of it, and then use sticks as the primary lead in the kind of inspiration. But yeah, it's a trip.
94 proof. And I got to say, it drinks to me hotter than 94 proof. What a beautiful whiskey.
The original inventory, very fruity and creamy, but lacked a lot of body. So that's where we double oaked it. And we think we came out with a really great whiskey. When we were designing it, we originally said we didn't want to come out with anything under 100 proof. But as we proofed it down, we never lost flavor and we kept getting a better finish to it. And so we looked at this whiskey everywhere from 107 down to 94 proof, and we settled on 94 because we had to, not because we wanted to, which is awesome. The difference with our product is we don't dilute or proof down inside of a tank. We do it in the barrel slowly. And so all of these casks were proofed down over the course of months with daily additions of, a couple dozen milliliters. And there's a lot of time left for intentional oxidation and marrying.
I got to say, I haven't said this in, I don't know, a couple of months, actually. I was just talking about this as well, is, the end of every year, I have a whiskey of the year, and it's not what's judged by other people. It's not what other people have said, and I'm like, oh, this is popular, and everybody's posting photos of it and stuff. What my whiskey of the year is what's been on my show, and it just kind of blows my mind. And I gotta say, I'll put this in the competition
Thank
for
you.
my whiskey of the year. I'm that impressed with it. If you looked up behind me, you'll see a little baby blue bottle up there. And that baby blue bottle I have a shelf up there that I'll put these whiskeys on. And at the end of the year, I'll taste through them all blind. And the whiskey that I feel like that day hits me is my whiskey of the year. But right now, man, this is outstanding. I love it. I get some orange creaminess on it. This thing's got some legs. And what shocks me, it's 94 proof. Tom's like, I'm not impressed with this son of a bitch right here. He's
Tom, let's speak about your old man's whiskey.
I gotta tell you, when we started this project, my father was alive, and I wanted my father to pass down all his knowledge of distilling and things to Nick, and unfortunately passed away about a year or two into our project. But Nick took about 100 pages of notes. But one thing that is really cool is that Nick, my father was a chemical engineer that was involved in repairing distills all over the world. Was really interesting. But he had a really good palate, but he hardly ever drank. He just drank. He said, I drank for work, and that was it. But he had a really good palate. He could pick things out. He could taste distillate off a still and say, you have a weld that's got a problem here. It's probably in the condenser or something. And he could tell people how to fix their stills just from tasting it. But what I really am excited about is we were lucky enough to go out, and I bought up 13,000 barrels of aged whiskey of the last 6-7 years. And we didn't really know what we were going to do with it when we bought it, but we knew we bought good whiskey going in a barrel. We wanted to get older. And then I wanted to let Nick go wild. And he's got a really, really creative palate and a really creative mind for finishing, and it's been just a blast to work with him on these things. So to have you say that this is special stuff, we like to make whiskey we really like, and we hope everybody else does too. So when we get a validation from somebody like you, it's just wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just, my palate's just it might have a dancing goat on it right now. It's got this nice creaminess to it. And I know people are like, whiskey doesn't have a creaminess. It does to me.
Creamy, yeah.
It's very oily to me and viscous for a 94 proofer. That's what's shocking. And then this orange, those orange spice candies are kind of dancing around in there on my palate off the sides of my tongue. And man, to me, this right here hits home for me. This is the kind of bourbon I like to drink. Sweet with still some spice on it. Very, very beautiful. Well, Tom, let's kind of get into your dad's history and then your history, because it's super fascinating. Not many people, not many families could have your guys' lineage, right?
No.
A dad, a son, and now a grandson in distilling.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad, he worked in a whole bunch of distilleries, didn't he?
Yeah, he's interesting. He started out with Shell Chemical. He was a chemical engineer, got a job working at the Shell refinery in Houston, and he was in the labs doing all sorts of work. And he wanted to get into sales, so he got into sales selling industrial alcohol. And his first job was in Chicago, and then he got promoted, went to Cincinnati because Procter & Gamble's there selling a bunch of industrial alcohol to Procter & Gamble. And then he did really well there, and he ended up going to New York and selling to perfume companies and all these different companies in Manhattan. But as a young man, he couldn't afford to live very close to New York, so he lived up north near West Point, up in Peekskill, New York. And he took the train in every day, and he never intended to get in the liquor business at all. He's riding the train in, and there's a car in the train, the back end of the train, where all these CEOs would get in at Westchester, which is a really high-end suburb of New York. And they didn't know what went on in that car, but all they knew is the big shooters were all in there. And one day the door opens up, and they said, anybody in this car know how to play bridge? And my dad goes, yeah, I know play. He learned in the Army. Little do they know, my dad was a master's bridge player, self-taught. He goes in there and he cleaned the clock of all these CEOs. And they start talking to him and say, what do you do? I'm, I did a chemical engineer. And one of the guys worked for a company called Standard Brands, which owned the Fleischmann Distillery at the time. And he said, we've got a problem in Owensboro, Kentucky at our distillery, and we need to have somebody there that can understand distilling. He says, it's just like we're finding it's chemical engineering. It's organic chemistry. They ended up offering him the job, and that's when he got in about 1960, 59, 60. He got into the liquor business. That was his first time. But he was as an engineer, he was very, very creative. It wasn't a matter of, oh, you follow all the principles and let's do it this way. His mind was always looking for unique and interesting solutions. And he just loved the liquor business, even though he wasn't a big drinker, which was a very, very interesting part of it. But that was how he got in originally. And when I got in when I got the bug was, he was the general manager for Barton at the time, ran over all their operations. And Barton at the time was a small little company. They made bourbon. They made, very old gentlemen or very old Barton, Kentucky gentlemen, et cetera. But they had this idea that Canadian whiskeys were going to go strong because at that time, VO and CC had just started to really take off. So they came up with an idea to start producing a Canadian whiskey called Canadian Mist, which is still sold today. They were buying their whiskey, and my dad says, hey, this is growing like crazy. We got to build a distillery. So he started to look at building a distillery in Canada, and that was in the early 60s that they started. The distillery was going to cost $25 million to put up. Barton could only get about $10 million out of the banks because they were a small company. So they made a deal with Seagram's. Seagram's was going to bring in Crown Royal at the time to the United States because it hadn't been sold in the States, and they needed more Canadian whiskey. So they made a deal to finance the remaining $15 million. But the really interesting thing is it got my dad linked up with Seagram's. And that's where in 1967, I made my first batch of whiskey because they brought me up there. I used to travel with my dad, and they had a bunch of engineers who were building the plant up in Collingwood, Ontario, Canada, which is near a ski resort. And we were actually staying in the old ski chalets in the middle of the summer. And 11-year-old kid, I'm like the houseboy. I have to clean up. These 5 engineers would leave in the morning. I had to clean up all their messes and stuff. But when I was done, I got to go to the plant and ride a little bike around and deliver messages. There were no faxes, no cell phones back then. So this plant, which was a half-mile long, they had to deliver messages from the front to the back, and I would ride this bike back and forth. And the one day, the distiller, they were cranking up the stills, and the stillman, as they called them back then, said, "Do you know where the yeast is?" I said, "Yeah, it's in the refrigerator." They said, "Bring me a box." So I brought this box. I put it in my little basket, took my bike there, and he let me crumble up the yeast and put it into a little 5-gallon bucket to get it liquidated or liquid. And then we dumped it in the book, and he let me stir it with an oar. And he said, "How old are you?" I said, 11. He says, "You made your first batch of whiskey." So that was my fun part. But the really interesting thing about this, when my dad got this link to Seagram's, is everybody's always wondering about where all this light whiskey that's out now. The light whiskeys that everybody's getting that's 18
Yes,
to
sir.
20 years old. The light whiskey started because Seagram's wanted to, at that time, 7 Crown was all whiskey. And a bunch of cheaper imitations, Old Thompson, all these other ones were coming out, and they were 20 to 30% GNS. And Seagram's wanted to keep 7 Crown's price up, and they knew they had to always make it from whiskey, but it was getting a little cost prohibitive. So they decided, can we make a whiskey that's different, that's still whiskey, so it can be 100% whiskeys? And then they came up with the idea for light whiskeys, my dad and the engineers, the distillers from Seagram's, and they actually went to the TTB, got it authorized to do it. And that was back in the 60s when it came out. Well, then Brown-Forman, Jim Beam, Barton, they all came out with these light whiskeys. And in fact, Nick and I bought a bottle of Barton's QT, which was Barton's light whiskey. They were going to try and get women to drink whiskey because they thought, hey, we're making this light whiskey. Let's call it whiskey and see if we can get women to drink it because it's a little lighter taste. So they made this Barton QT. It never really took off as light whiskey. But as a result, all that light whiskey was being used to formulate 7 Crown for all those years. And once Seagram sold off Lawrenceburg and all these other people came in, and the 7 Crown brand was sold 3 or 4 different times, nobody really cared anymore. And that's why all that light whiskey was made in the first place. And when they stopped using it, that's why it was sitting in the warehouses and aging like crazy. So I thought it was so funny when all of a sudden this 15, 18, 20-year-old light whiskey's coming out. I'm like, hey, that goes back to when my dad was working with Seagram's and came up with the idea for light whiskey, which is pretty interesting. But the really cool thing was when I bought this bottle at auction, Nick and I got to drink it, and it was made when my dad was running Barton. So it was made under
QT,
his supervision. So, yeah.
Oh, sweet. Oh, sweet. Yeah, it's nuts.
Does that story ever get old, Nick?
No. I got to tell you, Big Chief, it brings my grandpa back alive for me.
Yeah.
My father got a firsthand glimpse of a genius at work, right? And what I really got was a never retired guy who loved watching me shoot prone in a field, who loved telling me about cows. And I didn't get to hear a lot of these stories until later when I worked for him building the plant when I was in college. And but the one thing it always reminds me of is like my dad grew up in plants. My grandpa raised him in them. Um, in my grandpa's retirement, when he was setting up a plant in Princeton, Minnesota for USDP, they hired him basically to build a facility that can knock off anybody, which is really ironic because later they'd use it to knock off us. But when he was building that plant, he had him put an apartment in it. And he lived in this apartment in the plant because my grandmother refused to move to Minnesota from Shawano because they spoke Norwegian at church in Shawano. And she knew all those people and she taught kids. This is her home. She's never going to leave it. If you're not going to retire and stay home with me, I'm not going to come with you to Minnesota. And so he would commute. He'd sleep 5 days and 5 nights a week in the plant. So I went there and I stayed with him once. And that's why I'm smiling. Is I thought back to that time that me and my grandpa walked around the facility in the dark and made sure people weren't stealing cases out of the center pallets.
Well, I always say that this is what my podcast is for. You know, I always wanted to be the Paul Harvey of whiskey. I want to tell the rest of the story, as I like to call it, the rest of the dram, and stories like that from Tom about his dad, about your grandfather. I hope one day, Nick, that your kids and your grandkids, you can go back and be like, hey, we were on this podcast with Big Joker and Grandpa was on there. So let's watch Grandpa and you can learn something about your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather. And to me, that's important, to record history and record your family's history and tell the stories that are important and keep a man's memory alive. That's important.
Yeah, the interesting thing about our what you want to call legacy of distilling is many of these legacies. Like I worked with Booker and Fred No for a number of years, and I love their family, just great people. And Booker's legacy, he was the grandson of Jim Beam. So I mean, he's got the legacy from Jim Beam, who started the company, and Jacob Beam, who started it in the 1700s. But our legacy is really different because my dad he built or rebuilt or renovated 8 distilleries all over the world. Mount Gay Rum, Chivas Regal, Chartreuse, Galliano, all over the world. He was working on distilleries and helping rebuild them or fix problems they had. And we have
Scotland too.
Yeah, we have a really different perspective because we aren't family focused in one area. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is really cool about what Nick's been able to do is he's embodying the fact that we aren't centric to Kentucky or Wisconsin or, we like to see whiskey and we love Canadian whiskeys. We buy great whiskeys and
we love
let's blend them together and see what we got.
Canadian whiskey.
I've drank a lot of Canadian whiskey in my day.
There you go. It's similar. It's similar to unpeated Scotch, right? Like because you're using used casks, structurally the whiskey is going to depend on long-term oxidation for nuance rather than clever ester ferments, right? So like, I think there's no easy levers to pull like young tannin. There's no new barrels, and so like once you start getting into once you realize what to look for in Canadian whiskey, stellar, absolutely stellar. I love it. I love Canadian whiskey.
Yeah. And we have a style. We have a style that we're using actually. We're using a lot of used cooperage in what we do. Like we have a rye whiskey that we age only and use cooperage, and we like it because it really lets the grain shine forward, and you don't get the tannins fighting the spiciness of the rye. And it was always like, it's not the most popular rye out there right now, but it's rye that we like, and we like to present.
Yeah, we like to drink it.
Like it,
Yeah, it's funny is we didn't make any bourbon. Me and my daddy first opened this place, we didn't make any bourbon at all. We were just making pretty much used cooperage rye, and we made a little bit of malt, and some other funky weird stuff. But we made a ton of rye, used cooperage rye, and then after like 3 years, my dad was like, "Hey man, I think you got to make us some bourbon." And like we had to do it. It was like break our arm, we'll do it. But and now we make as much bourbon as we make rye.
Oh, and we like to call it the rye whiskey for people who think they don't like rye, because it's
rye
not
done right is what the wants us to hit as the marking point. Is rye done right.
So Tom, where does your distilling, besides being 11 years old and cooking and mashing a whiskey and distilling whiskey, where did it really take off for you?
Well, when I got out of college, I really got. I always had this bug up. I really, every time I walked into a distillery with my dad, I mean, I still to this day, I say this to Nick, we're cooking or we're fermenting or distilling or whatever. I smell that smell. I walk into the rick house and smell the whiskey in the wood, and it brings me back to a great childhood. I mean, I always wanted to be in the business. So I got recruited out of college to work for Brown Forman. And at the time, I was in the division that didn't have Jack Daniels. We had Early Times, Canadian Mist, Usher Scotch, etc. And what happened was the people at Jack Daniels met me in Chicago and really liked me and offered me a job. So after about a year with Brown Forman, I got moved into their Jack Daniels distillery, which was a totally separate division back then. And it was a godsend for me because I got to sit there, not only learn about their marketing, which was just incredible, but also work with Frank Bobo, who was their master distiller back then. And that's the first time I really had worked with master distillers. And it was really interesting to be there. And that's where I worked with Frank Bobo, and then with Jack Daniels, I also worked with Lincoln Henderson. Lincoln Henderson, the first time I worked for him, he was actually distilling Bowles liqueurs. He wasn't even working on Old Forester at that time. So he learned
Curacao.
Yeah, he learned how to distilling triple sec, Curacao, Amaretto, whatever it may be, and then he moved into Old Forester, and then he moved into Woodford Reserve, obviously. But that's and because I grew up with my dad as an engineer and a production guy, I was really comfortable with the production people. And even though I was sales and marketing and eventually heavy marketing, I always loved hanging with the production guys. And then when I went to work at Canadian Club, I worked with their master distillers up in Canada. And then when I went to Beam, obviously I really had an affinity to work with Booker, and they had a guy named Jerry Dalton who was a lot like my dad. He was a chemical engineer. He's a really, really astute guy that was the distiller between Booker and Fred, and then worked with Fred for a number of years there too. And it was really interesting. Working with Booker was a blast because he had running buddies with Jimmy Russell and Elmer T. Lee. So you'd go to Booker's house for dinner, and you'd be drinking, and all of a sudden you walk up there, and there's Jimmy Russell and Elmer T. Lee just talking about bourbon. And it's just the really interesting thing is they're commodity bourbon guys. They're not craft guys. They make great bourbon, but it wasn't about the nuances. It was about consolidation and consistency. It was a very different animal. But they knew a lot about whiskey, and it was really, really something. But it was really interesting, and it was the time too. Bourbon was declining in the '90s, early '90s, and we were really worried about where bourbon was going to go because a lot of the stuff that was going at the time was Captain Morgan and Coke and sweet items that were not really in the realm of bourbon, and really the small batch brands are what really brought the bourbon business up to the point where it is now, which is people started to really appreciate the quality and the nuance of really good whiskey. But I do have a funny story about Booker that we had a group of spirit traders in when we were doing the small batch tastings, and this Scottish writer asked Booker about his yeast. What type of yeast? Where do you get your yeast from? And Booker would say, "I get it from there." And he said, "Where? Over where?" He said, "I get it from there." And it just kept going back and forth. I get it from there. What you don't understand me? I get it from there. And I said, what he means is Booker says he gets it from the air because it's spontaneous yeast. And the conversation, I wish I had it recorded because it went on for about a minute and a half with a Scottish reporter and Booker. He was just trying to explain it in Kentuckyese of where he gets his yeast from, so.
I love hearing stories about Booker.
He was a wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. I just had a blast working with him,
Several times over the past 8 years, I've had a guest on that either knew Booker or they actually worked for Booker. Marlene Holmes from Milam and Green. She worked for him for several years and was the distillery supervisor there. I was wondering if you guys knew each other.
Yeah.
Little bitty lady. But she...
I knew Marlene, yeah. Well, this is a pretty funny story about 5 years ago, I think it was. I was in Louisville with Nick and some of our guys from our distillery, and we were at a discus meeting. We had a half day off, And I said, we're not looking at stuff. Why don't we run down to Claremont and we'll say hello to people? And, Nick knew that I knew people down there, but he didn't know how well I knew people. So we drive up to the distillery, park in the parking lot. There's all these signs that said authorized personnel, can't go this way. And I'm like, screw that. We walked right by it. There's a statue there, a Booker, with it in a rocking chair with his dog right next to him and some duck. And I said, I commissioned that statue for Booker. And as we're walking up to the T. Jeremiah Meme home, Nick is telling me, you can't go in there. I said, yes, I can. I knock on the door and the door opens up and there's a woman there named Linda Hayes, who is just a wonderful lady. She's Fred's secretary now, but she was an operations person in the plant. I knew her for 20 years. And she says, Tommy Maas. And when she says that, Fred, in his office, he goes, Tommy Maas out there. So Fred comes out and we took all the guys into the office and it was just wonderful, and these guys are like, I guess you really do know him, But as we're sitting there,
that's kind of how it went. That's kind of how it went.
Yeah. And as
it was
sitting
crazy.
there, there's a picture on the back on his credenza, and he says, in fact, I got your daddy's picture here. And he pulls up this picture, and it's a picture of Fred and I getting guitars from Leonard Skinner, because we had sponsored the Leonard Skinner 30th anniversary tour. And they gave us, we did this phenomenal concert in Nashville, and they gave us these guitars, which I still have, signed by all the band, with Leonard Skinner in pearl on the fretboard, which was really cool. But Fred says, did your daddy ever tell you, he's looking at Nick, he said, your daddy ever tell you a story about the Waffle House? And I said,
oh my God.
So we were at that concert and they were filming it for a DVD. And in most of the concerts, when we hang out with Leonard Skinner after the concert, there'd be a couple of bottles of Beam in the green room, and we'd sit there and drink them until they were gone. So this one we drank until they were gone, and it's about 2 a.m. And nobody's really that drunk, but everybody's kind of hungry. They had, they ate some of the green room food, but it was cold at that time. So somebody says, we got to get some food. And I said, well, we're going to get food at 2 a.m. in Nashville. They go, Waffle House. Waffle House is always open. So we pile in the Jim Beam tour bus, which is Jim Beam on the side with Leonard Skinner. And we also had a limo that went over there. We go to the Waffle House. There's only 2 people in there, the cook and the waitress. And we start deciding what we're going to eat. Within 20 minutes to half an hour, there were 50 or 60 people there. And this is before cell phones. I mean, there were no texting, whatever. We're like, how the hell all these people find out that Leonard Skinner was at the Waffle House,
The branded tour bus, maybe?
Yeah, this is the picture we took at
this
that.
This is from that day. Yeah. This is so if I may cut in briefly, everything you said was true, but there's one part that's really, really, really funny. So he's knocking on the door and Linda opens, and basically they notice him and they're like, oh my God, Tommy! And they grab him and pull him in. And they're closing the door. And Tom Lidisco, he's like, hey, my sons and my nephew are out here. Can they come in too? And then you could hear him through the wall. Tommy! Tom Maas is out there, and then he comes out and pulls him in. So it's like the whole time it was like we were just trying to keep up as he's getting sucked in.
I love it.
It was so funny, man. It was so, and here I'm thinking we're getting arrested on the grounds. I'm like, let's go back to the ADI. Like, what are we doing?
I got a funny story.
He's not.
I've got a funny story about Booker. So we took Booker on a tour, a public relations tour, and we would do these presentations of Bookers and some of the small batch brands. And there'd always be Q&A at the end. And we're in LA, and there's this reporter. He couldn't have been more. Booker was 6'4", 350 pounds. He was a big guy, right? And this reporter is probably about 5'1", somewhat meek. And the reporter says, hey, Booker, I'd like to ask you a question. How should I drink Bookers? And Booker goes, well, looking at you, you'd better drink it with your pajamas because you're going to fall asleep after you have a drink. 126 proof, boy. So.
Well, let's get back to Dance and Goat, because I poured another whiskey while we were talking.
Yeah.
And the Stillman's Sonder, you guys have this 10-year-old American single malt whiskey right here. And I am such a fan of American single malts right now. I'm absolutely in love with them. I call them the Scotch killer. For America. And that's what I want. I want Americans to buy American single malts, have American pride. I love whiskeys from around the world, but it's important to me. I wish you guys would have sent me another one of these for my Veterans Day giveaway.
I'll send you one. I will send you one.
Red, white, and blue.
I will send you one of these. We'll send you one this week. 100% we'll send you another one.
Is this the oldest American single malt in the United States right now?
I can't say that definitively. I don't know of one older. I mean, obviously Westland, the Westland, there's another one out west that's been doing a lot of work for a long time. They have some older distillates. Virginia Courage and Conviction obviously probably has some older stocks too. These are the oldest MGP malt stocks that exist to our understanding. We actually bought these so we like Canadian style whiskey, and we were the only people buying used cooperage whiskey from MGP. I think it was for about 12 or 13 months, and it was in the middle of a huge craze of bourbon, and they wanted to either monetize all of the used cooperage stock, which ended up being a lot of old blend stock from Seagram's, um, or turn it into like sell it and get it off site or convert it into storage. And so they called us. We have a friend, Barry. My dad worked with him for many years that used to be sales at MGP. It's pretty well known. And he called and, where's your dad? And I'm like, I'm not telling you. What do you want? He goes, I need to know. I just need to know how sharp my pencil needs to be. So you tell him if he's interested. And I go, hold on. Because I was sitting across from my dad in this conference room. I put it on speaker. And he basically offered a fire sale of all of their used cooperage goods. We weren't allowed to pick and choose. We had to take everything, and we did. And we ended up with some wild stocks out of there. And some of it was this malt that we got. Please. It's awesome.
The nose on it is a typical malted whiskey, I think. But then the palate to me doesn't match the nose at all.
It's wild, doesn't it?
This thing, the palate took me back to my childhood when I was eating malto meal and you pour a little bit of honey in there.
There you go.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely delicious. And now this one, it's a little bit 96.4 proof. Did you guys have to proof this down, and did you proof it down in a barrel?
So I'd love to talk a little. So this is the actual genesis of the Stillman's brand was the malt. We made the malt first. And there's not a lot of malt whiskey drinkers. And so we said, we need some more cash flow through here, these brands. And so we came out with the bourbon under the same principles. But when we came to this inventory, the Dancing Goat started around the idea that we wanted to create and celebrate our family's legacy and tradition of whiskey. It was a soft landing for me coming out of Ramchada. It was a place for me and my dad to keep working together and having a lot of fun and spirits. And truly in his retirement, my dad wanted to stay relevant and he wanted to still be involved. My dad loves a steak dinner. My dad loves a general sales meeting with distributors, and my dad loves a distillation run. Those are things that my dad just wants to do. And so we built this place, and we went and we built a whiskey collection. And what we really have is a giant, over 10,000 barrels of whiskey that we have on site here. We have a lot that we've made, over 5,000 barrels that we've made, and then we have a ton of sourced MGP still left that's getting very old. And one of the things that we had to do is figure out how do we leverage this inventory. And so we worked with the consultants, a guy named Will Stragus, Wellspun Consulting. They're wonderful family friends where we love them dearly. They actually hooked us back up with Aaron, who you spoke with my dad at Beam. So closed loops all over the place. But he really taught us to look at these stocks as their potential, not what they're at. And so working with him, we went on this giant rebarrel test where we took the malt whiskey and we at different proofs. The highest proofs we were looking at gauges at were 115, everywhere from 115, 110, 100, sub 90 or about 90. And we went into different finishing casks. We used cognacs, different types of cognacs, Sauterne, many different types of sherry, even though I thought I hated sherry, port, ex-bourbon casks, depleted ex-bourbon casks, Wisconsin brandy casks. And we tried to make what, as an inventory item originally, was pretty grassy and a little weak. It's a 10-year-old columned and doubled single malt with no peat. And so it just didn't have a ton of character to it, but had a ton of potential. And so we used finishing casks to drive acidic reactions in the ester profiles of the whiskey to create phenomenal nuance. And so the final product, it's one inventory segment for MGP, but we finish it in 3 different types of new oak, cognac cask, Calvados cask, a very wet bourbon cask, so one of our old bourbon casks, actually the bourbons that go into Stillman's. And then the last one is a Wisconsin brandy cask, one of our Barron's brandy casks. And we think that we've made an awesome, compelling whiskey. And I really appreciate your response to it.
I want to break in here too. Is we bought this malt inventory, I think when it was about 5.5 years old. And one of the reasons we're buying this aged stuff is we wanted to get aged whiskeys out there. We really liked whiskey with age on it. And we knew that, starting from scratch, we weren't going to be able to bring anything out for 5 to 10 years, 20, of our own. So we wanted to get in the business. And once we started buying the aged used stuff, we became a real good buyer of it. When we bought this malt, Nick and I were really excited about it. As it got older, we thought, oh, this is going to be really good. And then we were disappointed with the base whiskey. It didn't have a lot of legs to it. It just didn't have a lot of character. And that's when Nick decided, well, let's start playing around with some aging techniques to get some more flavor in there. And I think he's done
flavor and texture.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Flavor and texture. The one thing with this whiskey is it had, and this is a lot of what Will was talking to. And Will taught us this about the bourbon as well, is, whiskey as it sits is whiskey. You can bottle it as is and you can sell it to somebody and hopefully it goes well. Or whiskey can be an ingredient. And I don't know if you know who Will is, but Will worked at Barrel for a long time. He did the original blend I'm pretty sure he did the original blend of Seagrass, marketed it. Will knows flavor in a really beautiful way. And as a mentor to me and as a family friend, he's taught me so much about structure and how whiskey should go together, the importance of acidity and oxidation. And, Stillman Sonder, we have a dust jacket label that's an homage to an architect from our state that we love dearly. And but the dedication to architecture as a principle is we want to create great ingredients and bring them together perfectly in a way that creates a product for our customers who deserve a fantastic product. And we think that we've done that with these two products.
I love both of them. I think they're amazing. Before we go to the half, because, hey, listen, folks, this is going to be a long episode, I'm going to tell you, because the great conversations, they don't have a time limit for old Big Chief. Tom, when did you leave Jim Beam and when did you decide, you know what, I'm just going to make my own distillery?
So my last position at Jim Beam around 2005 I was director of Bourbon Worldwide for them. So I went all over, and it was a great job. I got to go to all over the world selling Jim Beam, because Jim Beam sold in 116 countries, the number one bourbon in the world, right? But I saw some things happening at Beam. We got a new CEO in there, and I just didn't like what I think he really wanted to commoditize and bring Beam into a much larger business, but really not comfortable with the roots of what he was doing. So I made some comments, and I'd always been over in my career, I was always the alternate view in a meeting, and I got a lot of credit for that because I just didn't follow the beaten path. And as a result, one day I walked in, I got fired. And that was after a very good career at Beam. Many of my compatriots were like, what the hell's going on, Fred? Couldn't believe it, So I went home. I had done really well in some real estate, and I had really done some pretty good investing. So I could have retired. I lasted about a year, and I just was driving myself crazy. And I just was like, I got to do something here. Came up with the idea for Rumchata, which is the one that, that was a 12-year journey from 2009 to 2021. But during that journey, my life, my heart was always with whiskey. I said, we're making a lot of money on Rumchata. We did very, very well with it. But I really would like to build a legacy distillery. And my dad was working with me at the time. He and I never worked together before Rumchata, but he ran our production facility at 80 years old. He started, and he worked until the day he died at 90. I wanted him to be able to share some of his knowledge with Nick. So we put the distillery up, started talking about it 2013, got it going in 2015, 2016. And unfortunately, he passed in 2016. But that's how we got into the distilling part of it. And I said to Nick, we're not just going to, a lot of people were doing the craft distilleries where they would put a small still in. And we bought a really small still to start. I mean, one barrel.
It ain't even that small, though, dude. It's 240 gallons. I got it.
The idea was I wanted to do something important. And,
that one.
There's a little still you can kind
of one back there,
right there.
Hey, you gotta keep it.
But the good thing,
baby, we keep it. We use it.
The good thing was Nick got to learn on that still, and really was able to do it. And the reason we keep it now is, for example, we were talking about production for next year, Nick and I said, Nick, I want to have a bunch of experimental runs. I want you to start playing, with stuff here, and that's really, how we got into it. The whole idea was to keep the legacy of our family, because my father worked behind the scenes for so many years. Nobody knew who he was. But the day he passed, the people all came out of the woodworks. Max Shapiro, Dave Pickerel, all of those started coming up and telling us what he meant to them, what they learned from him.
What he did for
And
them.
it was really, really interesting to get that feedback from them, because here's a guy that never wanted any spotlight, never wanted any exposure. But
those
whiskey,
people helped us
thing,
build our
it
place.
gets in your blood, and you want to keep doing it. So
Yeah, it does.
So I do know the story, but tell listeners why you guys are called Dancing Goat. I know the story, but I want you to tell listeners.
I'll try to keep it brief, because I can take this one for a walk for sure. But we were originally looking in that New Glarus. Do you remember this, Tom? Do you remember looking at that damn property? We were originally looking at an old property in New Glarus, the old New Glarus property brewing, and I went through it. We toured it with our old business partner who's gone, and when we toured it, they asked me, they were like, "This sounds crazy. Like, how much cheese are you gonna make here?" And we were like, "No, man, we're making whiskey here." And the guy was like, "Oh, okay." And then we called back to make an offer on it, and it wasn't for sale anymore. And they ended up building a distillery there. And so I was very young and a little resentful. And I was like, "We're going to find another place in New Glarus and put them out of business." And so we went and we were touring this mini golf course, and somebody had left goats there on the property, like keep the glass grip. And as we were sitting there having a meeting talking about, like, the big problem with this property was in the floodplain had to be built up. So we were talking about driveways, entrances, egresses. And this goat comes out, sticks his head through the fence, and he's just kind of like, "Meh," like bawing at my dad. And like, obviously he's a beautiful man. He's a slice of heaven, 6'8", tall, drink of water. He catches your attention. But this goat was like, "Man, you're gonna feed me or I'm coming home with you." And it just always stuck in us. It was so funny to have something with a goat. So we knew we wanted to do something with a goat. And then our friend Mark, who's a wine guy, a branding guy, he came up with the Dancing Goat name and sent us a little branded thing as a joke to say, like, "You got to be the Dancing Goats." So that's what we did.
One thing you forgot to say, Nick, was when we left there, I said, "I don't think we're going to buy this property, but if we do, you got to get him to throw in the goats."
Yes, and we also said we were going to do goats on the roof after that, and then we got sued by a local restaurant that has goats on the roof. It's been a saga. It has been a saga with goats, like, since this. But one thing I do like to say, like, hearing about my dad's story, obviously his time at Beam didn't exactly end the way that he wanted it to, right? And then his time at Ramchada ended up exactly how I think we could never be more grateful than what happened to us in our family and the families of our loved ones that worked with us, right?
Well, everything happens for a reason in life, right?
It absolutely does.
It's how you kind of dust yourself off.
And that's what a goat does.
Yep.
That's what a goat does. A goat takes a tin can, he makes a meal out of it. And that's what my dad did. That's what my grandpa taught me to do. That's what I try to teach my kids.
Well, and the other thing is we reflected on it, and the attributes of a goat: stubborn, loyal, those are the things we like to consider are the attributes of our family. We're stubborn,
not the prettiest,
very loyal.
We're not the prettiest guys either.
Yeah,
you look pretty to me. I mean, look at me. I
appreciate that.
I'm a beautiful man.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. You're slice of Orange, Texas, baby.
So you guys, you buy your property, and my understanding is you're on the backside of a kind of a winery or a vineyard up there.
It's a winery that never opened. So they have
vines. They had vines, but no fermentation.
Vines. Dude, we got these, and we look like we're in brandy country. We couldn't be happier with the aesthetics of driving into our driveway, because we drive through a vineyard, and we're the 5 acres where they were going to build their winery. They just couldn't afford to do it. They needed cash flow. The funny thing, I don't know if you're a NASCAR fan or not, but they ended up buying an old NASCAR auto museum in town, and it's just pretty funny because it's just the way it's all gone is just really funny. But this became his winery.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
Everything does. Especially
maybe
with
that was the right time for Tom to leave Jim Beam, and I'm sure it didn't feel like it at that time, did it, Tom?
No, I mean, I really loved my job at that point, and I was just shocked but those things happen.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you got to dust yourself off and figure out what the next chapter is. So
the interesting thing was, as that happened to more people at Jim Beam that he loved and spent time with, whether they fired or just left on their own accord, they found homes with us at Agave Local LC, and we got to have a great time working with people that we love. Like my mentors from that company are guys that had worked with my dad at Beam forever, and I had gone on family picnics with when I was, 9, 10, 11, 12 to Great America. It's
We
crazy
ended
how
up
it all
at the
ended up.
height. At the height of RumChata, we had about 80 people, 40 in production, 40 in the field, and then we had an administrative group of about 10. And of those 10 in administration, about 8 of them were ex-Beam people that had either left or got fired. And it was people were like, what are you doing? I said, I'm hiring people I know and they're good. The original one was Agave Loco. I originally had this concept of, I thought tequila was going to go into an esoteric. I thought tequila was going to have an offshoot like single malt was an offshoot of Scotch. Little did I know it was mezcal. I found out 20 years later it's really mezcal. But I thought you could make some herbaceous flavors with tequila that would be really interesting. So I took 100% agave tequila, soaked a jalapeno pepper in it and a habanero pepper and some other ones, and made a tequila that was really, really hot. The trouble was it was way too hot. You drink a couple of drinks of that. It made a phenomenal margarita.
I loved it. It was not too hot. It was way
I
too
was
hot
gonna
for
say-
straight. It was way
I was
too
gonna
hot.
say, could people in Wisconsin even drink it?
It wasn't
You would be.
it wasn't too hot
Go
going
on.
down, but it was too hot coming out. That was the problem.
Get out of here! Get out of here, dude. The funny thing was, me and my friend Ben Balson. I love you, Ben. Me and him drank a lot of that one night, and the only complaint we had was the heartburn the next day.
Yeah.
It was stellar. The tequila source, I don't think I can say
Yeah.
it here. I can't. Okay, the tequila source is stellar, like absolutely stellar. And then the pepper cure job on it was awesome. It just was a very specific product. What
Yeah.
Tom didn't realize is he would start a very interesting restaurant. I'm not saying that my dad invented the spicy margarita, but he kicked off a trend in Chicago where our corporate office was, and then it went mixology wise versus ours. So it had a great application. It was just very limited in that application.
I love
But
it.
I'll tell you what, when he was developing that early after Beam, we all wanted to fucking kill him. Everybody wanted to kill him. Our whole
It was
house.
in the kitchen. It was in
Oh
the
my
kitchen.
God, it was in our pores, dude. The whole house reeked of Sauza. I mean, because he started and he tried all these different types of tequilas as bases. And this is kind of how we did the RumChata thing, how we developed RumChata too, is we started ground one with a bunch of different spice packets and we developed our own horchata recipe eventually. He did, and I just ran errands for him, right? But the really cool thing was his product development of tequila was he just went and bought like every tequila at the liquor store and was putting different peppers in all of them, serranos, habaneros, jalapenos. And my poor mom, who does not drink any alcohol, so she hates the smell of alcohol, especially tequila, as she found out, and does not drink anything spicy. Our house reeked of peppers and Sauza tequila for months. Even I'd leave school and it was like, fuck, what the hell is going on? So it was fucking wild. But that's all part of those are the building blocks that led to what we do.
My kitchen was my lab. But this is a funny story. So when the idea for RumChata came out, what happened was I tasted horchata for the first time, and I was like, God, this stuff is phenomenal. And I was involved when I was at Jim Beam with Sour Apple Pucker, which they make the appletini out of, Hot Damn, which is a cinema liqueur, etc. A lot of different items there in product development, because I always had that affinity for the production guys. And they always wanted to bring a marketing and sales guy into the meetings. And I learned how they put the products together. I learned how to do things. And that's what really made me successful with RumChata. But what happened was I wanted to find out what horchata was. So I asked Nick. Nick was 17 at the time. He goes, Dad, it's the burrito place we go to. It's the white stuff in that big jug. I said, well, let's go taste it. So we went to the burrito place, got it. And oh my God, this stuff's great. I think I can make a great liqueur out of this thing. So I said, but Nick, I want to make sure. I found out that there were all these different family recipes. Everybody had a different way of making it. So I sent him out to 5 different taco joints, and he brought back 5 different cups, these white styrofoam cups of horchata. And we sat there and had a taste test, and we said, this is the one. And then I matched that recipe, and it's still to this day, RumChata tastes like that one
awesome.
burrito joint.
I can take you to that restaurant.
Horchata, yeah.
One thing I would like to say about my dad's time at Beam, which I've only started to really learn more about now, as like, because I've really delved into whiskey production and spirits production and finishing, and I've always been doing sales, but I've never really had a lot of business acumen. And we've hired other people. We've hired other people to do that stuff. We've hired people that are really strong at that at this company to help us. run this company and make our dreams come true. And one of the things that I've been doing in the last couple of years has been trying to catch up on that side of business and life, right? And one of the things I've learned about whiskey is I always thought that you just made as much as you could, and then the fucking marketing people and the sales people, they just go sell it. But intricately involved from the marketing side is the forecasting of production. And what my dad, and what I've heard from people who were operators and that he worked with, is that my dad was one of the only people from Deerfield, Illinois, that would go to Claremont to see what the issues were with productions, because it impacted his forecast. And as he's trying to teach me forecast now, you should see these sheets that we make on the table. It's amazing to see
Chief,
how a business meshes together. It's really cool.
Chief, it's incredible when you go to a distillery as big as Jim Beam and you have different aged whiskeys and you say, we got to decide today what we're going to sell Knob Creek in 9 years. And it's incredibly hard to do, and it's, you always want to make more because you can always blend it off. If you make too little, you can't blend it off. And we had some things. One of the things that I got in trouble with at Beam was the CEO wanted to do business with Costco. So they offered him some of our aged whiskey that we were going to be using to use for Knob Creek. And I said, you're crazy. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. We got extra. And what happened was they ran out of 9-year-old whiskey and they had to go on allocation with Knob Creek. And unfortunately, I said, I told you so too many times. And that was one of the reasons I got fired. But, it's incredible what you have to do to lay out your forecasts to make sure you got whiskey in. One of the most interesting things was, I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was 95. Heaven Hill had a huge fire. They burned a whole rack house burned down, and they lost all their 3-year-old whiskey, all of it. So we helped them out tremendously at Beam, get a stock of 3-year-old. But as you're going through, if you lose a whole year, you can't make that up, and it's incredible when you think about losing a whole year in a bourbon the size or a distillery the size of Heaven Hill, what they have to do to make up for that, as you go forward. The other thing I always told Nick is, it's pretty funny, is when the bourbon business had declined and you had brands like Old Crow that used to be a 3 million case brand, and all of a sudden it's doing 300,000. We had Old Crow. We had Granddad was 1.5 million, 2 million cases, is doing 500,000. We had all this old whiskey. And there was a time that I used to tell people the best value whiskey you could buy was Old Crow 175s in California in plastic bottles for $8.99. And the whiskey in that bottle was 11 years old. It was incredible. Wow. The whiskey was so good, but we just had to get rid of whiskey because we had all this whiskey because the volume had declined so much.
Where's that at right now?
Yeah, if somebody could find a bottle, you'd see how good it was. But that's
the amount of those drank on the street out of a paper bag. It's just brutal to think about. It's just brutal.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, we are coming up on the first half, or we're past the first half actually. But that's great. That's what the whiskey trip's about. But before we go to the first half, listeners, let me tell you about my friends at Whiskey Valor Foundation. My buddy Lewis over there, he created Whiskey Valor Foundation to eradicate drinking and driving in the military. Yes, that is a problem, if you can believe it. Soldiers, airmen, sailors, Marines, they like to drink. They got a little Class 6 and pick themselves up a bottle of military special. Nobody knows where it's made at. Maybe Tom does, but
he does.
But we want to stop drinking and driving in the military. And what this does is Whiskey Valor Foundation is able to provide Uber vouchers and Lyft vouchers for active duty military to reservists so they can get themselves home from events. So I'm going to pop up the QR code and their logo here. If you want to give $5, $10, $50, if you want to give $100,000, I would appreciate it. Let's try to buy as many of these Uber vouchers as possible and to eradicate drinking and driving in the military. I know Lewis at Whiskey Valor Foundation would appreciate it. Gentlemen, on the second half, we're really going to get into some whiskey, and you also sent a bottle of this, and I've been staring at this bottle right here. Folks, you are going to want some of this right here. I guarantee yourself. Swiss Misters. This is a whiskey finished from a rye mash, finished in chocolate bitters barrels. But you got to stick around to figure out what old Big Chief's going to make you do, and stick around for
conversation on the second half, we're really going to get into Nick's background in distilling and kind of the rise of Dancing Goat Distillery. And then we'll finish it up and see what's coming in the future for Dancing Goat. You stick with us and we'll be right back. The Whiskey Trip is proudly sponsored by Guardian Coins, a veteran, family-owned and operated company that understand what it truly means to honor service, story, and tradition. Guardian Coins just doesn't make the challenge coins. They craft symbols of pride, legacy, and camaraderie. From military units and first responders to distilleries, brands, and special events, every coin is designed with purpose and built to last. Here at the Whiskey Trip, our official Whiskey Trip Challenge coin was brought to life by Guardian Coins, and it represents exactly what this ride is all about. Craftsmanship, community, and sharing a great pour with amazing people. From custom artwork to flawless finishes, Guardian Coins works with you one-on-one to turn your vision into something tangible, something you can hold, collect, and pass down. So if you're looking to create a coin that tells your story, whether it's from your unit, your brand, or your next big milestone, trust the folks who know how much that story matters. Visit Guardian Coins on Facebook and tell them Big Chief from the Whiskey Trip sent you. Now pour something good and let's get back to the ride. All right, listeners, we're back with a second half with Dancing Goat Distillery. Tom Maas and Nicholas Maas, the founders, the owners, distillers, some bad motherfuckers is what I say, because they making some great whiskey up there in Wisconsin, folks. And Nick, I poured another glass of this Swiss Misters. Why Swiss Misters?
I can't wait to talk about this whiskey. So Swiss Misters is really awesome whiskey, and this is out of our Dancing Goat Presents series. And so our Dancing Goat Presents series serves two functions. It's a place where I am allowed a lot of creative freedom to do whatever I want from a liquid perspective, but also a stupid label perspective. And it's a place where we can get actionable on small lots. Like, as I shared earlier with the large used cooperage purchase we have, we got a bunch of test lots, a bunch of orphan barrels, abandoned barrels, a bunch of stuff. And this is a place where we can put that all. It's hard to commit to a brand in terms of marketing, labeling, all that stuff, when you only have 300 cases of something to sell. But so we created a framework that was really flexible that allows us to sell anything in it. And so this one is release number 13. It's called Swiss Misters. And this is a hot cocoa inspired package for hot cocoa loving whiskey drinkers. And this is a really good example of what we love to do. We love to create great whiskeys, approachable whiskeys that are affordable, and that are absolutely fucking delicious. So this is a 95 rye from MGP in used cooperage. It's called Whiskey from a Rye Mash because it's Canadian style rye that wasn't made in Canada. So we have to call it that. We can't call it rye whiskey, which is really dumb because Canadian rye can call it rye whiskey here, even if they didn't use it. So it's a stupid thing that we're stuck with. But we took this. I'm just gonna call it rye whiskey for clarity in our discussion. We took the rye whiskey, and we finished it in chocolate bitters barrels. These chocolate bitters barrels, I don't know if you're familiar with the product. It's Woodford Reserve Double Oak bitters. You'll often see them at the checkouts of registers at liquor stores. I wanted to say they're fantastic. As a bartender, as a spirit maker, they're fantastic products. They have a spiced cherry, chocolate, an orange, a vanilla. We use all of their different barrels. Theirs are all made for them by a third-party company, and we buy pretty much all of that inventory, especially all the chocolate we get for this release. We do a lot of different finishes in these. We do an orange that's really popular. We do vanilla extract really popular, but this is definitely the one that takes the cake. This is really hard to believe it's not a flavored whiskey. This is truly just a finished whiskey. The way that they make their bitters is they make them in cask, and we buy them after. So we truly just made a blend of our whiskey from a rye mash, filled those casks, and just pulled them when they're ready. This one in front of you reflects over a double-digit cask blend, and there is multiple generations in here. What I mean by that is we can fill it the first time and use it. We can fill it again without bitters going into it and use it. We can fill it up to 4 times and we still get chocolate out of it. The first time, it's so chocolatey, you can smell the plastic wrapper of the candy bar. There's almost like a Mylar to it. The second generation is all chocolate candy bar, no plasticness to it. Third is, we call it Whisper City. There's chocolate whispers all through it. It's unbelievable. And then 4Gs and 5Gs is really more of a texture thing. And so what's in front of you now is multiple generations to give a really well-rounded product that smells like a Three Musketeers bar. I mean, you get the nougat, you get the chocolate, you might get Ovaltine off of it, but it's definitively a whiskey on the palate once you drink it.
I get that. We used to have these cocoa packets in the Army, in our MREs, and you could take the creamer and put it in there and make yourself chocolate pudding if you knew what you're doing. But you'd make that hot cocoa, and that powder inside there is what I would get from this. It's bringing back that memory. And I don't have a whole bunch of great memories of eating MREs in the Army, but that's one of the memories I have of that. And, you put that, like I said, the coffee creamer in there, and you mix it up, and maybe even put that instant coffee in there too and mix all that up. But this right here is to sip on it is, you said hot cocoa with a little bit of spice. Man,
It's unreal.
This is blowing my mind.
It's unreal. It blows my mind. And I made it up.
and then the proof on this is crazy.
112.4.
Yeah.
It's still definitive. And that's the thing that's so cool about it is this isn't Marie Brizard chocolate liqueur. This is definitively, I mean, there's no sugar added. It's just definitively a whiskey. But one of the things that we did is the barrels that we chose for this blend before we finished in the barrels, they had really great rye. A portion of them had really great rye spice, but they all had, and this goes back to what you were just saying about your MREs, they all had great vanillin content, especially for our ryes. They weren't super spicy. They're more vanilla, because all good chocolate has vanilla. Vanilla is a complement that gives depth to chocolate. So more people like milk chocolate than dark cacao, right? And I truly love this whiskey. It's one that it leaves my mouth watering, wanting for more. And you can sit there. I don't know if you're a smoker, but this thing with cigars is crazy. It got a straight neat. I don't drink them with ice personally, but and that's also black walnut Manhattans with this are stellar. And then people think that this, but a old fashioned with this is like a chocolate Tootsie Roll. It's unbelievable. It's so delicious. Not that I'm trying to like sell cocktail, like, oh, you got to hide my whiskey and cocktails. I shouldn't be doing that on this podcast, but this product is unbelievable.
I'm sitting here thinking about my friends that I'm going to be like, okay, I want them to drink this and taste this. And I'm actually recording next week. I'm going to sit down with one of my sponsors, Guardian Coins. They make challenge coins. You can see my big giant arrowhead up there, challenge coin for my podcast. But I'm going to sit down with him, and I'm going to let my buddy Nick try this right here, because I think this is one of the ones that I'm going to bring down there to record with him with, because he says he like only flavored whiskey, but this really isn't flavored. This is a finished whiskey.
It's legally not a flavored whiskey.
Yeah.
So one of the things about whiskey from a rye mash, one of the things that's really cool about it is we can use any barrel we want. We can use a brand new barrel, and that's as a primary aging vessel, as a finishing vessel, as anything. And it counts the total time of the spirit. Whereas if this was a straight bourbon or a straight rye and we finished it in chocolate bitters, it's no longer a straight bourbon. Now it's a straight bourbon finished in chocolate bitters, but we wouldn't even have to call out that this is finished. We could just produce the whiskey like this. We could fresh fill casks like this if we wanted to of unaged goods. We have a lot of flexibility in this space of whiskey from a rye mash. The thing is, it's just hard to sell because people think when they're like whiskey from a rye mash, they think you're up to something. Do you know what I mean? They just think that you're like, it's like blended and it's just not. It's just getting through the consumer noise and educating in a sphere of people who are already highly educated and suspicious is just tough to navigate. But we've been navigating it with good product. And so we let it speak for itself. We tell the truth that this is just whiskey finished in a cask. It's no flavors, no sugar added, no anything like that. And people can tell when they taste it because it is so different.
I love it.
Would you say it's unique, Big Chief? Because I heard you don't like unique things. I'm just teasing you a little bit.
To me, it's not unique. And I've had some whiskeys that, maybe were flavored, or they had, chocolate malted, rye, like Woodford has that, right?
Yeah.
They've released a couple expressions like that, but this is totally different. It does blow my mind. And you guys are, what I do love about this, that you're so transparent about what it is. Number one, you put right on the front of your bottle, and I don't think I've ever seen this before. I absolutely love it. It says Dancing Goat Distillery presents sourced whiskey. Now, I don't know anybody else out there in the whiskey community that's saying that to people, and just being straight out honest and saying, fuck everything else, what everybody else is saying, and telling people what to do. You guys are actually just putting it out there and saying, hey, this is what it is. You like it or you don't like it. I guarantee you, people, if you're not getting online right now as we're speaking and ordering for this, a bottle of this, shame on you.
This will be available September. So late September, seal box and shared pour. Come in and get it.
This would be a great gateway whiskey. I'm gonna have to, Miss Viv, I'm gonna beat her hand off this.
Do it. Take her down.
That didn't sound very right.
Neither did what I said.
But I'm gonna have to keep her from drinking all this, because I think she's gonna absolutely love it. And the proof on it is what I love too, that it's not just some watered down trash.
No, and it shouldn't be, because you deserve better than that. And so does the whiskey. So do the craftsmen in Lawrenceburg. I'm the only person in the world today talking about the craftsmen at Lawrenceburg, because everyone else wants to just shit on MGP, which is crazy to me, because they are craftsmen.
Oh, they make some great whiskey there.
They make stellar whiskey
right down the road from there.
They make stellar whiskey. I mean, if you notice, the themes of this story is my family's intimately involved with Seagrams for years, and I'm a student of MGPs. A lot of the people there are mentors of me that have taught me how to make whiskey, how they learned how to make it, which is how my grandpa taught people how to make it.
So how did you
phenomenal juice?
When did you decide, okay, I'm gonna become part of this family business of being in distilling?
So I was bartending in college, and I wanted to open bars. This is what I wanted to do. And I thought that I needed a college degree just to get one. And I figured that working, in 2 years of school, I was working 60 hours plus at the bar a week on top of school. And other times I was working closer to full-time hours. A lot of that was, football season, it's very easy to get overtime and make a ton of money in Iowa City, where I was at. But I was going to go into the bar space, so I thought. And then marijuana was becoming a really big industry as well. And I had an opportunity to go out and work in physical processing. So the distillation of marijuana, which is the exact same thing as the distillation of alcohol. And I was considering taking that opportunity as well. At this point in time, I was going through just some searching in life for who I was and what I wanted to do. And I was really having a really hard time with that. And my dad had let me know that there was an opportunity for me to stay in the Midwest and work with him and my grandpa. And not only was there an opportunity, they actually needed my help. And so I just dove in. I started off helping my grandpa build a bottling plant in Pewaukee. And that's kind of what got my beak wet. I think that's what kind of got him to realize that, well, obviously they took, one, they needed labor, two, I needed something to do, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I had some options, but they probably weren't the best options for me long term. And so I got this opportunity to build this bottling plant with my grandpa, and then I got an opportunity to work sales for my dad, and then I got an opportunity to, I was on-premise sales, so I really focused on the on-premise on bars. And what I would do is I'd go in there and try to sell our family liqueur to people that didn't want it, because they'd bought a bunch of shit that didn't sell. And what I would do is I'd say, all right, I'm going to come back after my work with today, and I'll come up with 10 great recipes for you guys to sell. We're using rum chata, and I'm going to get rid of all that shit under your bar that you haven't sold. Then will you bring in my product? They said, yeah, sure. If you can. And so that's where I started working on the flavor side. And my grandma, I'd always been interested in production of whiskey, but I never really thought I would have a job like this, like a job in an office. I always thought eventually I was going to go and run bars and work in the bars again. And when rum chata started to wind down in a way where I had more time on my hands because the business didn't need me as much. The brand was more mature, and there was a lot of people that used to work for Jim Beam doing sales that I was doing before, and the programming of the on-premise was done really well. And my dad and I had a conversation about just what was next for me, and he had said, well, I have a friend that wants to build a distillery, and I've always wanted to build one. I think it'd be awesome. We should do it, and you should build it with your grandpa." And I said, I think I said, "Fuck yeah." I'm not sure what I said, Tom, but I think I said, "Fuck yeah." And I kind of just dove in, and I went to go get advice from my grandpa in Milwaukee at Midwest Custom Bottling, which was what the factory that we sold with the Rumchata brand. And that's the factory that I built with him. I built the bottling line, the original bottling line there with him. I built with him. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, I built that with him. That was him. He built it. But he showed me what hard work was. He showed me how to make a meal out of a tin can. He taught me about honesty, and it took me a long time to learn about honesty, integrity, but he showed me about them. And one of the things that was really cool with my grandpa was his ability to problem solve, his creativity. My dad and him leveraged 13 credit cards, personal credit cards, to get this brand off the ground because they couldn't get any money during the financial crisis. And it just seeing the ingenuity. We took a canning machine from a Coca-Cola factory in Atlanta and made it into a bottling factory that Gallo wanted to buy 12 years later. It's unbelievable, and if you go and see it today, it's crazy what they're doing there. We built a facility they could really max out in a way that we couldn't salvage this. And so I went to go work with my grandpa on this stuff, and he told me point blank, and this was like, 2013, pot stills are all the rage, craft, um, uh, Old Fangled. Everyone's drinking Old Fangled to like 12 and 13, and pot stills are all their age. And I'm like, talking to my dad, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have 2 pot stills. We're gonna do all this shit. And I don't even know what I'm talking about. Right? I got sketches on a piece of paper, and I go to learn about it. I sit down with my grandpa, and I say, me and your son want to build a distillery with you, and we want to know what you think. And what I need to know is how much square footage I should look for 2 stills, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue what I was. I know that's how you design a business. I was an idiot. And my grandpa looks at me, and he was not someone that cursed often at all. And he looked at me kind of full of disdain like this. He's like, "You and your dad are idiots. You will never make any money without a column." And then he just like turned back to his computer. And I was sitting there, I was like, but grandpa, like 2 pot, like, but 2 pot stills. And I had to talk to my dad about it later, and I was like, he wouldn't even talk to me. And then my dad was like, "He'll come around. You got to explain to him that we can sell the whiskey. People will pay us money what the whiskey's worth. It's not like we're just gonna try to sell like $3 handles, And so we had to get him to come along with us. And he opened up to me, and he started showing me the ropes a little bit, but he never gave me the answers. He never gave me a list, which would have been really nice. He gave me books.
It sounds like Tom put you up to it and didn't want to tell Dad. He's like, "Hey, Nick, I need you to go tell your grandpa this."
Well,
I don't know if that's how it.
I would tell you one thing that Nick didn't say, but he was the mixologist for Rumchata, and he wrote a couple of recipe books. He had a really good palate, and he really understood flavors and putting things together. And I thought, if he can get the knowledge on distillation and spirits, combinations from my father, I think it could be really a really good thing. And frankly, I was looking. I just was still in love with the liquor business, the whiskey business, and I wanted to have a whiskey distillery. So I did kind of bamboozle him in there, but I did think he'd be good at it, and he's proven.
The truth comes out, Nick.
Proven I was
I'm cool with it. 20 years, I've been resentful for 20 years, but now I'm cool with it. No, I'm kidding. I have lived a
I
life.
Will tell you the only regret
I've gotten.
The only regret Nick and I have is my dad passed too early, because if he was around now to see this, he would just be loving it. He would be in there,
and he
would be in there tasting whiskey, telling Nick, "You should do this, you should do that."
He'd live here. We would build him an apartment in here, and he would live here. My grandpa, so he was helping me out, and my grandpa worked until he died. And the last time I saw my grandpa was after one of these meetings. My grandpa had a thing where I don't come from a cold family. My family is very supportive and friendly and awesome, but we also have expectations. And the expectation is that you're going to do the job right the first time. That comes from my grandparents, specifically my grandmother, Sonia, and her husband, Duane, my grandpa. And the most praise, the best praise I ever received in my life was on the Zamboni in his factory if he didn't say anything. Because he'd come out, when he'd finish his paperwork, he'd come out and he'd just stand there like the chancellor. He just watched me clean the floors. And if he didn't say a word to me, I did it exactly as I was expected to. And you don't need to be congratulated for cleaning the floor like you're supposed to, right? But the idea that he said nothing, and we would walk out to the car silently, and he'd go make me a steak. And I'd be like, absolutely. I go cook him a steak. And he'd tell me, turn that thing on 3 minutes aside. That's all I need. Whatever you want, cook it however you want. Those were like the best days of my life. Now I'm looking back at them, right? They're those days that, like, I'll never forget. And I love those days. And he would have been awesome to work with. And I didn't get the opportunity to work with him because he took a trip to China where he caught a meningitis type virus in his spine. We had to bring him back from China, not like medevac, but like med flight him back. And he was in the hospital here where he caught MRSA, and he's never able to recover from the MRSA. And so he was bedridden for what, like a year and a half, Tom, maybe 2 years, by the time he died. And when he died, I mean, it was awful. It was awful because the mind was still fine. It was the body that failed him. He was a prisoner, right? And when he died, I didn't have all the information I needed, and I knew that for like 18 months. I was like, damn, I don't know what I need to know. And so my dad had suggested maybe I go to a class, and I went to a distilling master class by Dave Pickrell because I was like, man, this guy makes badass whiskey. I'd love to go see his whiskey. I'd love to just try it. And I walked. It was in New Holland, Michigan. I walked in, and I don't know if you know Dave, if you knew him, but Dave liked to snort. And you could tell in the morning if he had a snort the night before. And so he's looking pretty rough. He got the hat low, and I walk in, I look in, I just kind of stop and like look at him. And I'm like 20, probably 28 years old or something, 26 years old. And I'm like looking at him, and he just like picks up his head. He goes, "Problems?" And I go, "No, sir." And he goes, "Sit down." Puts his hat back down, goes back to bed. And I'm like, all right. And so I go and I sit down, and he does only Andrew Faulkner, who sold the class, came in, and he does roll call. And they get to me and he goes, "Maas." And Dave goes, he gets up, he's like, "Maas? Where?" And he pointed at me, and I go, "Hi, I'm Nick Maas." He goes, "Maas, you Duane's son?" And I was like, "No, I'm Tom's son." He goes, "I don't know Tom." He goes, "I know Duane." And I go, "Tom is Duane's son. I'm Duane's grandson." He goes, "You're Duane's grandson?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "The fuck are you doing in here?" And I go, "My grandpa's," he goes, "What the fuck are you doing here? Grandpa teach you everything you know. What are you doing in here?" I go, "My grandpa's dying. He can't talk anymore." And then we started a project to honor him, and I'm kind of up Shit's Creek, and I don't know what to do. And he said, "Well, come talk to me after class." So I went to the bar with him, and I started buying him drinks. And I'd already called my dad and been like, "Yo, he said he'd talk to me. You need grandpa." But what we didn't know is that he worked for my grandpa at Bart. And he told me he declined the opportunity to have Thoroughbred be a consultant on a project. And he said, anything that you need, he goes, "Send me all of the plans that you have done, send me everything you need, and tell me what you want to do, and I'm going to help you finish it." And so we've been working with a group of people to build this place that you can see behind me. And he came through and put the magic touches, we call them the Duane touches, on the things that my grandpa would have wanted to see and have done in this facility for us. When we first opened our tasting room, we just opened production. We never opened a tasting room. And we opened the tasting room because Metallica was coming on tour, and they were co-promoting Blackened. And he was the master blender of Blackened.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew that we had a distillery in Madison that he could use. And he called our partner Travis at the time. He said, "You boys are going to get that distillery open. We're going to rent it from you. We're going to be the first." Yes. And you're going to do it because you need to open your tasting room. You haven't done it yet. You need to do it. And he was the kick in the butt to get the tasting room open, and invite people in for the first time. And we did a tour, and I walked around and gave a tour to Dave Pickrell and all of these people who had come to try Blacken. And in the tour, he's really building me up, and he's being Dave. He's the man. He's truly the man. "Hey, look what Nick did here. Oh, look at it. Phenomenal investment. Your grandpa would be so proud of you." End of the tour, he fucking grabs me. "Get over here, kid." Pulls me aside and brings me down into right down here, kind of by the still I just showed you a picture of. And he points up at his steam valve. He goes, "You see that fucking thing, boy?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Uninsulated steam trap, call him a swazzle. I want that out of here. You lose $1,000 a year on that steam trap. Get it the fuck out. Your grandpa'd kill you." And I was like, "Yes, sir, I'll get that out." He goes, "There's one more in here." Takes me in the boiler room, points out the other one. And then he goes, besides that, your grandpa'd be so proud of you, boy. He walked out of our distillery. He went to the concert, texted me for a good place to get steak that night. I sent him to Rare in Madison, and he passed away 3 weeks later in San Francisco. So we got to.
That sucks.
That fucking sucks. But you know what? He got to see it. Do you know what I mean? Like grace of God, he got to see it.
Yeah,
and at least I got to show it to somebody, that knew my grandpa.
And I also wanted to say that the legacy of my dad lives on because you can eat off the floor in our plant. And that's what, he always said, every facility he had, it's got to be clean. He said, because you bring people through here, they look at it. And I'm sure you've been in distilleries, you look at it, there's a lot of junk laying around. You can eat off the floors in our plant. And when he said that Zamboni, we have the industrial floor cleaner with the suds and all that stuff. Yeah, it's one of the legacy things that we've always done, and it's amazing that every time people walk in, we kind of forget about it. They go, "Oh my God, is this place clean?"
Just how it should be
too. Yeah,
it's cleanliness is flexibility in a production facility. So if we only made one mash bill, it wouldn't, and it was sour mashed, it wouldn't matter that bacteria and yeast had infected everything in our facility, right? But we make so many different products for us with different yeast types, sweet or sour, and then we have a lot of customers that cleanliness is really the key to flexibility in a facility like ours.
Well, I say we raise a glass to Duane and Dave Pickerel.
100%.
And I poured a glass of your guys' whiskey made on your stills there.
There is not a better. May I tell you why that is the best decision of the night? And this is a moment of fate that you did
let's
that?
do it.
Because this whiskey that I made with my friends here, in honor of my grandpa, for my dad, in honor of my father on this call, is 100% Danko rye whiskey. 100% rye whiskey was Dave Pickerel's favorite whiskey to make. He made it with no enzyme. We use enzyme because we're just trying to make sure we get the batch to market. But he's very famous for a clever little cook process that he teaches craft distillers where they can cook 100% rye with no enzyme if they want to. And we make this every year in honor of Dave to keep on his legacy. This one specifically, this is in our Dancing Go Presents. Notice this is Dancing Go Presents our whiskey, not Source whiskey. So we have that little. We do like to have a lot of fun. And one thing you notice is this is a very playful. It's not a very serious whiskey. It's a very playful whiskey. And we developed these whiskeys to be our serious whiskeys. And so we want to show two sides of the Maas family and who we are. This is the fun-loving, experimental side, but also we are traditionally a serious whiskey family, and we wanted a product to reflect that. But for this one, we have a product called Limousine Rye. It's a product that me and my dad love very much, and that product arose from a need for me to start getting my hands on products while we were laying down barrels and start finishing and blending. And so that really it's a way to teach us how to make whiskey while our whiskey is aging. And so we love Limousine Rye, Limousine Oak, the oak. I actually have it tattooed on me. I love it so much. This whiskey was aged exclusively in brand new charred and toasted Limousine Oak barrels, which is very rare. Usually whiskey's only finished in it. It's not exclusively aged in it. So this was 100% rye, 5 years in Limousine Oak, charred and toasted cask. Dave Pickerel specialty. Cheers.
I'm glad. I'll tell you, I got a toast for you. Because Dave Pickerel, you did this in honor of him and Duane, Tom's father, your grandfather. So let's raise a glass to Dave Pickerel and Duane, the father of Tom and the grandfather of Nick. Family isn't just the blood that runs through the veins. It's the people who stand beside you, share the hard miles, celebrate the good ones, and never let you ride alone. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's some badass whiskey right there.
That's 5 years. It's only 5 years old. You know what I mean?
I want to share something because I tasted many whiskeys with Booker No, and I want to show you what Booker used to do with whiskey. A little nose, a little taste. And that statement that was perfect. Damn, that's good whiskey.
It is some damn good whiskey. That's for sure. Well, gentlemen, so let's get into some questions. And
So Nick, has your dad made sure that you were set up for success? That'd be one of my first questions. Has he made sure that you had everything that you needed to make the distillery successful?
100%. I'd say even above and beyond. There have been times building this where I didn't feel that way, and the reason for that was our time was still stretched with the Rumchata brand, and I couldn't have him as much as I needed him. Either literal time, but also just like guidance and development, right? But our facility is top of the line. As well as I can learn how to make whiskey and operate it, we're able to do that. One of the really cool things about our facility was we worked with some really cool. We had with the Rumchata. We started it when we still owned Rumchata, and then selling it, we got a big investment for the facility, and we put a big vendome system in. More than 10 times what we could currently produce was added to the facility. And going down to Kentucky and buying all that equipment and just learning about that process, it was unbelievable, and it's when we built the Rumchata plant, it was literally pieced together with equipment that was completely repurposed and rebuilt. And that was led by my grandpa. And one of the things that we did here is we bought a bunch of really nice fucking equipment because we wanted to build a really nice show place for him. And then he ended up dying and he could never see it. And so I will say that the love and support of my father financially, but also emotionally, mentally, and more important, like from education, has always been thank you. I thank him all the time for the opportunity because this is just such a, I look out the Rick House at the sunrise. I'm making gin in the mornings and I can see through the tasting room. I can see that our sunrises here are unbelievable in Wisconsin. They really let you know that there's something to live for, and I'll sit there with the still humming. And if you got a sweatshirt on, you can lean against the steam jacket. I wouldn't recommend it, but I'll be leaning against the steam jacket with my sweatshirt on, my hoodie up, looking at the sunrise with my Chihuahua Jack Russell in my arms, just thinking, how did I end up in this position? And yeah, he's fully supported me. I think that the only thing that I need to do to be successful is listen and continue to learn, stay humble, and make sure that the really smart people around me get to do their job so that we can bring the great whiskey that we know how to make to market.
I
I
will
love it.
add to that in that I learned this from my dad too. Is my dad used to say he didn't have an MBA, he had an MBWA, and it was a management by walking around. And I learned that what he wants to do is he wanted to let people do their jobs, not be there standing there telling them what to do, but he wanted to look over their shoulders and make sure everything was good and they were safe. And that's kind of what I've tried to do with Nick. And sometimes Nick said to me, "Dad, I need more guidance here." But I think he's learned a hell of a lot more by having to physically do things himself. And I learned that from my dad. There are two ways to teach people: you tell them what to do and they do it, and then they'll learn, or you give them the tools and the opportunity, and you let them fend for themselves. And as long as they don't kill themselves, they'll learn.
You can give a man a fish, right? He'll eat for a day. You teach him to fish, he won't die 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
He'll be at the bar at 5:00.
Yeah, he'll be at the bar at 3 a.m. too, because you kick it off at 4 a.m. for a good bass fucking fishing. Sorry.
Well, I absolutely love this whiskey right here, and it really does showcase what you guys are doing. It's so much darker than the other bottles. The bourbon's like right up against it, I think, in darkness. But this one's super dark for a rye whiskey. Beautiful. Why the name Wisey City Solo Cask?
So that's a Whiskey City Solo Cask, and so this is our playful line. And so it's a place where we do have a little more fun than, for instance, another one of the brand names in this was Tommy's Malted Bang Dog, which was a malt bourbon blend that was stellar. I'm gonna send you a bottle of that actually, because you look skeptical. I think you're gonna love it. But this is a place where I do sometimes get a little too fun and clever with the names than I should be. But Whiskey City came up because I was a little upset with the village here for dealing with some water issues of like for the community. And I told them I was never going to put Cambridge on a label again. And so we started saying Whiskey City instead of Cambridge as a joke. And we just realized like how cool it sounds. And then the spelling WISCY, whiskey is like it's very whiskey of you. It's very Wisconsin of you. And so just kind of like a double entendre of like we like to say that we call Cambridge Whiskey City because we don't like to say Cambridge anymore. But realistically, we like to call Cambridge Whiskey City because there's more barrels of whiskey here than there is people. And that is absolutely the truth. There is more. We got like 5 to 6 barrels of whiskey for every man, woman, child. So we're kind of like the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but a very small 10. Actually, we got 10 barrels of whiskey for every man, woman, child in Cambridge. So it's just being playful and kind of stupid.
I love it. Well, I got a quick fire round for you guys. I always have a quick fire round, and we're going to go through some questions and just quick answers. Don't overthink it. I'm not trying to break the bank here, but we're going to start with Tom. Tom, quick and easy. Jack Daniels or Jim Beam?
Jim Beam.
Bourbon or rye?
Bourbon.
94 proof or barrel proof?
94 proof. Actually, I'm going to say 8-year 86 proof. That's the best. The Beam formula at 8-year 86 is stellar. It's stellar. And I wish they went back there, but they're off that now. So
you're going to like these next 3.
Yeah.
Quick answers though. Best whiskey advice Frank Bobo ever gave you?
Have fun. Frank Bobo was one of the nicest men you'd ever meet. He couldn't say a bad word about anybody, but he loved a good joke.
I got a whole bunch of them, but I'm not going to say them on air.
Yeah.
Best lesson from Lincoln Henderson?
Don't toot your own horn. Let the whiskey do it. Let the whiskey speak for you.
One word to describe Booker No.
Legend.
And then one whiskey legend you'd give anything to share another pour with?
Duane Maas.
Same answer.
There you go. I love that. Now, Nick, this is your quick round.
Awesome.
Tom, do you think he's going to be able to do quick?
We'll see.
Quick is fine. Concise is usually my problem.
All right, here we go. Distilling or blending?
Distilling.
Bourbon or rye?
Rye.
Finished or unfinished?
Unfinished.
I know the answer to this, but pot still or column still?
Ooh, both.
You can't have both. You only got
one. I want the column with the doubler. Column with the doubler.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Chocolate bitters or brandy barrel?
Ooh. Chocolate bitters. But that's hard to answer. That's hard. Our brandy is nuts.
You think that one's hard? Wait till you.
Can I send you a bottle of brandy? Would you accept that?
I'll accept anything.
I'll bet that in the cake. I'm going to send you that too.
And here's your dad's like, quit sending this joker whiskey. But you send me anything. Well, the good thing you know about Big Chief is I'm going to let people drink it. It's not going to sit on as a trophy. It's going to get open. It's going to get drank, and it's going to get shared to the masses. I want to share good whiskey and good alcohol with people. And brandy is one of the things I love to share with people to showcase what a distillery really can do. Well, let's finish up these 10.
Sorry, my bad. You know me.
I didn't think you could do it. 10-year source whiskey or 5-year dancing goat?
5-year dancing goat.
All right. And finally, who's got the better palate, you or your dad?
My dad. And I can tell you right now, Dean Sharness at Warehouse Liquor in Chicago will be the first person to tell you that. And that is one of the best people to tell you that. I will tell you my dad's palate is unbelievable.
All right. And so your dad's too old. You're too old now to get whooped by your dad. But and this don't have to be a quick answer, what was your first whiskey that you got to drink?
My first whiskey that I got to drink was Jim Beam Black Label. It went down rough, came up rougher. But it started in me a curiosity for whiskey that when I did return to it, I actually remember in college drinking bourbon again and being like, man, this isn't what my dad liked. And then I tried Black Label and I was like, oh, that's what that was. Jim Beam Black Label.
Now, Tom, what about you? What was your first whiskey that you really got to try?
It was Kentucky Gentleman. And when my
Love
dad
it.
worked for
Yeah,
Barton, I
yeah.
was about 16 years old, and I saw these bottles. I said, I got to try this stuff. And
I think I got the decanters downstairs still that
it
you
was
probably
pretty rough.
siphoned out of.
It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. Yeah. This is a
All
pretty
right.
funny story. He told you about Gene Charnas from Warehouse Liquors at Chicago. Gene likes to have, he's got a kiosk in the front where he's got a bunch of sample bottles under it, and they're all in brown paper bags. And he likes to see how good the people selling him whiskey, who tell him how good their whiskey is. He'll pull out a bottle and say, what do you think of this? And when I talked about Jimmy Russell with Booker No, I drank a lot of wild turkey because Jimmy Russell used to bring wild turkey over. We used to do this here and there. And so Gene pulls out a bottle, and I could tell from the smell it was a Russell's product. I didn't figure he was doing wild turkey. But then when I took the first sip, I said, "Oh, this is a turkey Jimmy Russell brand," and it was Jimmy Russell's brand. It just blew his mind because he was like, "How the hell did you know that?" He didn't realize that I've been drinking with Jimmy Russell at Booker's house for 15 years.
I love it. I love it. Okay, this is a question for both of you. We'll start with Tom, and it's not a quick fire question, but if you could drink any bottle of whiskey on the face of the earth, what would it be?
Any bottle of whiskey. I'll tell you what's really interesting, and this is a kind of crazy thing. I bought a bottle of Canadian Club that was distilled. It was not distilled. It was aged and shipped in December of 1933. It was one of the first bottles to come to the United States after Prohibition. We have that bottle at our plant. And every time I look at that bottle, I said, I'd love to try that stuff, see what it tastes like. And I told Nick, in 2033, when that bottle's 100 years old, we're going to open her up and drink it. So I would say that is the one, because it's the curiosity's got me. I just want to figure out what the hell does a bottle of whiskey that's 93 years old taste like, So
I love it. Nick, what about you?
So my dad has told me about a lot of whiskey, about his career. I've been a sponge for his career, right? And just wanting to understand, like, how did you end up where you did, the opportunities you did, and how do we leverage that here? And there's two whiskeys in particular that he's told me a lot about that I really wish that I had the opportunity to taste with him back in the day. One of them was the first release of Jim Beam's Distiller's Masterpiece. I think it was a 20-year-old Beam product. I don't know when it was released, maybe in 1990 or 1992. And I think the story was they literally lost the barrels in the rick house, and they just found them, and they're like, fuck it. Let's put it in a case and sell it for a ton of money and see if we can sell really old whiskey.
It was the first bottle of whiskey. We wanted to get a bottle of whiskey that sold for over $100, a bottle of bourbon that sold for over $100 a barrel, probably 95, 96 or somewhere in there. And the first one was an 18-year-old or aged in a cognac barrel, which I wasn't real happy with. I thought it had too much tannin. But the second one was 20-year-old aged in a sherry barrel, and it was outstanding. Outstanding. Yeah.
The other one he always talks about was the original Jacob's Well. I know they came out with a re-release of Jacob's Well a couple years ago, but it's clear. The one thing about Beam that when my dad was working on the forecasting versus now is they had 4 mash bills then. Now they only have 2. And so the Jacob's Well that he often talks about, what's actually funny is when you were gone during the break, we were chatting, we talked about this Jacob's Well. But it was an 8-year-old Old Crow and
it was 8-year-old Crow, 8-year-old Old Crow, and 8-year-old Jim Beam mix.
Mix at 86 or at 90.
I'm sorry, not Old Crow. 8-year-old Granddad and 8-year-old Jim Beam mixed, and it was 50-50, and it was stellar whiskey, just stellar whiskey. We only had it up for about a year and we only had it up for about a year and a half, and then Basil Hayden, which is the old Granddad formula, they needed the 8-year-old whiskey for Basil Hayden. We needed it there, so we said we can't do both. So we had to take Jacob's Well off the market, but it was stellar whiskey.
I've been looking for one of those bottles for the last 10 years.
Yeah. So I got a story for both of you, and I usually don't do this, or I don't talk about, experiences I've had, but a bottle that I really want to try, there is a decanter at Maker's Mark in their conference room from 1961. It's cast strength. Denny Potter, when he was working there, and Jane Bowie, I was in their interview. I mean, they were like, what's one thing you would like to drink here? And I was like, I want to drink the whiskey in that decanter right there. But it's sealed up. I don't know if they glued the glass in there. It's just stuck. But those jokers are trying to open it. She was like, we'll bust the bottle for you. And I was like, no, do not do that. But I would love to drink the whiskey in that decanter. It's like a decorative
it was like a gift or a trophy.
Yeah.
Maybe it was for their million barrel. Who knows what it was for? But I would still love to taste that wheated bourbon
Oh yeah.
from Maker's Mark from 1961. That's
Old
cast
growth
straight.
oak and everything on there too. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, it'd be absolutely amazing. Well, before we get to the future of Dancing Goat, listeners, I want to tell you about Frontline Heroes Outdoors. My buddy Preston over there, they're taking veterans like myself, active duty military, and first responders back out into the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking. They're taking them to football games, basketball games, and they're trying to get their minds off the stresses that they went through in their jobs, in their deployments, the stresses of life. They do retreats with families. They do all kinds of stuff. I'll pop up the QR code and the photo of their logo. But what I'd love for you to do is help out Frontline Heroes outdoors and provide this therapy, this release of stress for active duty military, for veterans like myself, for first responders. Give $5, $10, $50, give $100,000. If you're a big business out there, Elon Musk, if you want to give millions and millions of dollars or $1 trillion, give that money to Frontline Heroes Outdoors. They truly need your help to help these veterans out, these first responders. I really appreciate it. Next, I got my buddy, the Cajun Yankee over in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'll pop up his event he's having in February. It's called Hearts and Barrels. His son has a heart condition. He's trying to raise money for that. What a great event over in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It's the VFW there. I think it is February 27th, but I'd love for you to help him out. If you're a distiller out there and you would love to send whiskey to this guy, he is trying to get bottles to auction off and to raise money for the I think it's American Heart Association, but he's doing a great job at this. He's getting it off the ground. This is the second year they're doing this. I really appreciate the help on that. Guys, I appreciate you letting me talk about my sponsors
100%.
and talking about my friends that have charities like Hearts and Barrels and Frontline Heroes Outdoors and Whiskey Valor. It's, sometimes you got to give back, you know,
100%.
and that's like the giveaway we have. You guys are giving back to your whiskey fans out there, you know, that's paying it forward, you know, because that one giveaway might build a whiskey drinker for centuries, and then their family like, man, we won this bottle from Dancing Goat, and that big ugly chief he sent it out to us. But but seriously, that giving back to the whiskey community always helps out and gets lifelong fans and whiskey drinkers that'll enjoy the great, I mean, this is an amazing bottle. Folks, I shit you not, this thing is an amazing bottle. That old phrase, I shit the bed on this. I don't know who came up with that phrase, or the shit hit the fan. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the future of Dancing Goat. Nick, what's sitting in the warehouses right now today that you're most excited about?
49% malted bourbon.
Really?
Yeah, I can say, and I'm not in like, I love high rye bourbon. Like, it was tough. The only reason that question was hard for me, rye or bourbon, because I was like high rye bourbon or rye. The my and like that's my favorite. It's not. I don't know if it is. My favorite thing to make is 49% malt bourbon. Me and my dad both love it. It's a real interesting pool of what's going on. Tasty notes like Whoppers, Ovaltine, tons of cream, caramel. It's big like a cab. There's good acidity in it. You sour mash it and you start to play with the pH a little bit. You'll get fruits to lie underneath it as well. We make ours with the blue corn. We don't care what blue corn it is. Every year we make it with the blue. We try to make it with the blue corn if we can get one. The first year we did it, first time we used blue corn was Hopi Blue, pretty decent stuff. Didn't use it again for a couple years. Just didn't use colored corns. Then we had a chip manufacturer from Michigan call us, and they said, "Hey, we heard that you people will pay more money for grain than you should, and you won't demand to put it in the ground." And I went, "If it's interesting, it's sustainable, yeah, I would." And so we got this tortilla chip blue corn from Michigan that was absolutely bonkers. I mean, it was nuts. It was more purple than it was blue. And we did that with the malted, and it was the notes that came out, but the mineral that's in there, the ferments are just very healthy. They're very viable. They threw off really great, strong ethanol that's ready to trans-estrify in the barrel in a really interesting way. Then the last year, we actually found a local place that has overrun every year blue corn. And the thing with these blue corn chip people is they're usually bred these corns themselves for a long time, and they don't want someone else to get the seed corn to to make the chips from it or any other thing from it. But we're not putting any of the grain in the ground. We're fermenting it all. And so these people, where they usually would destroy it, the flour, or use it as feed, we would actually we gave them a resource to get rid of their extra. And so I think that we're going to have some absolutely insane stuff to look at about 8 years old on that. And I think we need another 3 years, 3 or 4 years to get there. But that is what I am so excited to share with the world.
Tom, this is for you. And this is a pretty deep question right here. And I really thought this out when I was doing my homework, doing my research, and podcasters, bloggers, influencers out there, people always ask me, you always seem prepared. Do your damn homework. Understand our industry, understand brands when you talk to them. Don't just have them on to use them. Really get into their history, their legacy, and that, to me, that's important. That's my piece of advice for you folks out there that you want to get into this. Put the work into it. It takes work. But Tom, when you look back at Duane and then you look at Nick, what do you hope the Maas family name means to whiskey industry long after you're gone?
I would say creativity and quality. That's what I really appreciate about Nick. Nick embodies what I really want to see in whiskey, and that's let's just not do it like everybody else does it. We've got some interesting ideas. Let's play around with it, and if it's good, if it makes good whiskey, let's keep doing it. And you can see with things like Swiss Misters that other people aren't doing that.
Definitely not.
Nick was talking about the high malt bourbon. I had this idea that I wanted to. We had a sample of an 8-year-old high malt bourbon. I was like, God, I really like this stuff. And I call it. It's funny. I call it old man's whiskey, and I make jokes about it because the younger people that are drinking whiskey now like the high proof stuff, and I say that's because they were raised on Shock Tarts and Airheads. They put a lot of sriracha on their food. I grew up in an era where it was all about mellowness and lower impact. And this high malt bourbon, you get the real nice sweet flavor of bourbon up front, and you swallow it, and you get that mellow, velvety malt feel going down. It's just really, really something. And I'm really excited about it. Nick actually blended me a bourbon with our malt and some of our bourbon, and it was outstanding. And it's just the fun stuff like that to me is just you can't put a quantity on it, or it's what makes life good, so I mean,
Most definitely.
I'm 7 years old, and people say, when are you going to stop working? I said, this is like a gift. I get to go up, and like I said, every time I walk into the distillery or the rick house, the smells bring my childhood back, bring my dad's back, and then I sit there with my son drinking whiskey and sampling. It's insane, and it's funny. Nick talks about the industry. We went and did a tasting in Virginia 2 weeks ago. We had to fly into Virginia. We had to drive about 2 hours to this place. We did a tasting for like 7 hours. So we're standing behind a table for 7 hours. We get back in. It was a blast. I had people would say, "Why would you spend the time doing a tasting?" And I said, "Because it's fun. It's a great part of life, So
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Well, where can our listeners find you guys on social media?
Oh, hold on. My marketing people told me to be ready for this question because I always butcher this one. So if you liked what you heard today, thank you so much. And you can find us at stillmansonder.com, dancinggoat.com, at Dancing Goat Distillery, and all your favorite socials. And you can find me on site here.
All right. I love it. I'm guessing Tom doesn't have an Instagram account.
No, actually I did, because I have to be able to check this stuff out, but I've got people that follow me all the time. Like, I don't post anything, so there's not a
Tom,
lot.
if you're looking for Tom Maas on Instagram, it might be him. It might be my brother.
Oh,
My older brother's name is Tom too.
His nickname should be the Whiskey Stash.
That's dude, fun. He is. You know what we call him around here behind his back when he's not here? The most interesting man in the world, because he looks like a 6 foot. He's really tall. If he's actually like, if he stood up, he's 6'8". So he looks like a 6'8" version of the actor that does the most interesting man in the world. It's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, I usually don't get a whole lot of facial hair, because I mean, hey, I got one of the sexiest goatees.
You got some shape to it, that's for sure.
It's got that nice gray going on right there. And
yeah, you got that
salt and pepper in the center.
Yeah. Well, I got a funny
but
story.
Your mustache is good.
When I was probably in my early 30s, I got 3 boys, and Nick was probably 6 or 7 at the time, whatever it was, and the other boys were like almost 10 years old. I said that I was going to grow a Fu Manchu, the down the sides,
Oh yeah.
And I started to grow it, and my oldest son, who's named after me, Thomas TJ, he said, "Dad, stop! You're just scaring me." So this mustache, I guess, is friendly, but a Fu Manchu is scary, So,
well, let's get to this giveaway, shall we, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
We got a bottle behind me right there, the Swiss Miss. I'll grab that sucker. 11 years old. So this is what we're going to do. You're going to get a bottle of this Swiss Miss. I'm going to throw in one of my rocks glasses. We also have, you guys sent me a Steelman's cap, a t-shirt, some sunglasses, some stickers, some other swag. We're going to put all that together. What you're going to have to do, folks, is you're going to have to put an emoji, comment an emoji of a goat. There is an emoji of a goat. So put an emoji of a goat. You're going to, on Instagram, you're going to have to tag 4 friends, or on Facebook. And then what I want you to do is also, when you're tagging those 4 friends, I want you to comment, because this is an 11-year-old whiskey. I want you to tag or comment the story of your longest whiskey drinking friend and how long you've been drinking whiskey with that friend. Make sure you put that comment on YouTube over there. You get a bonus if you always subscribe and comment over on YouTube on the show. I really appreciate that. You got to like and share the post as well. You got to do that. Share it to your story, share it to your main page. And then you got to follow Dancing Goat Distillery. You got to follow the Whiskey Trip. That's important to me, that you give those follows. Let's help raise up a distillery. Let's be a rising tide, folks, and help craft distiller out, and make sure they're successful in buying whiskey. I'm going to give one more extra thing for you. If you can buy a bottle of their whiskey and show proof of that with a photo of the receipt, I'll give you a bonus for that too. I think that'd be pretty badass. Tom or Nick, where can they buy your whiskey at online?
CO Box and Shared Pour. Also, I do know this is also on my sheet. Hold on. Is this something? Yeah. So we have distribution in Wisconsin, California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, DC, and soon to be Georgia, on the Stillman Sonder product. And then everything else, like the Swiss Misters and all the fun Dancing Goat products, Seal Box and Shared Pour.
And they can come straight to the distillery and get
We would love to have you share with the distillery, and we have a bunch of wild stuff in this line, like cherry bitters finishes, just distillery only here. So.
All right, so let's go through that again, what you're going to have to do, folks. An emoji of a dancing goat or a goat. I don't think there's a dancing goat one, but if you can put it sideways or something. Hey,
you put a disco ball in front of it. I think there's a disco ball.
A dancing goat, tag 4 friends, comment with your longest whiskey drinking friend. Follow the Whiskey Trip, follow Dancing Goat Distillery. For bonuses, comment and subscribe to the Whiskey Trip. And then also, if you provide a photo that you bought a bottle, I'll give you a bonus for that as well. You got to be 21. You got to reside in the United States. And I will announce this on Monday evening as always. Hey, I'm not breaking my streak. I think this is like 70 something giveaways.
straight in a row. I don't know anybody else out there that's doing that. And I couldn't do it without partners like Dance and Goat Distillery that put up swag in a bottle for me. And I can't say thank you enough, gentlemen. I think that's a pretty badass giveaway. Any last words for listeners out there?
Thank you all for taking the time to hear me and my father. I really appreciate the opportunity ahead of myself and my father, and all the goats here. We don't take it lightly that there's people out there that want to support us and that we need to not let down. But the opportunity to come on today and hear some more of my favorite stories and spend some time with my dad and get him in the limelight, I really appreciate that opportunity. So thank you to all the viewers, and Chief, you found a brother in me for life if you'll have me. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're part of the family now.
I'm coming down. We're gonna kill some gators, bro. Let's go.
Yeah, Chief, I want to thank you for having us on. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you for your service to the country and now your service to the craft whiskey market. So thank you very much.
I gotta tell people this. I haven't sent him a text, and he said, "Hey, congratulations." But I'm a Kentucky Colonel. And I've been a Kentucky Colonel for quite a long time now. But just the other day, I got an email, and I'm also now, because of my good friend Jared Porritt, he was on the show last week. He put me in to be a Tennessee Squire.
There you go.
And that was pretty amazing.
That's tight.
I think I got a couple more of those titles to go. And Tom, the greatest, title is dad, right? That's always, that's something right there.
Hey, I have 4 kids under 5.
Ooh, that's too much.
Dude, he has, what do you got? 9 grandkids in the last 2 years?
9 grandkids under 7 years old.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And I'm still standing.
From nothing to something in no time. It's unbelievable.
Well, I got one last thing out there. I always talk about be the rising tide in our community, in the whiskey community. And I wanted to give a shout out to one of the folks that's in my new Facebook group that supports me. Taking the Whiskey Ride. Taking the Whiskey Ride is on Facebook. I hope, Nick, if you're on Facebook, and Tom, if you're on Facebook, please join Taking the Whiskey Ride. I will, for sure. This group, we want distillers in there. We want to have a community different than other Facebook groups out there. We want a group where you can go in there and not be hassled. You could drink anything in there. If it's whiskey, or if you have a day that's been rough and you want to have a beer, or it's too hot outside, a cocktail, whatever, we want you to come in there and tell your story. Take the ride with me, folks. You want extra content, Taking the Whiskey Ride. But my shout out this week, and I'll put it up there for everybody, is Morgan Hessler. Morgan, first off, thank you for your service to our nation. We can't do it without people that sacrifice, and it takes a lot to serve your country and raise that hand. But thank you, sir. But also thank you for being part of Taking the Whiskey Ride and raising up our community, supporting craft whiskey out there, supporting the podcast. I appreciate it. I know the people in Taking the Whiskey Ride appreciate it as well. Well, gentlemen, once again, thank you for taking this ride with me, being part of the Whiskey Trip family. You never can tell. I might just show up at the distillery up there.
You're always welcome. I got coyotes for days out here to get clipped, boys. So let's get going.
Well, let me tell everybody where you can find Old Big Chief on social media. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now YouTube at The Whiskey Trip. I also have a website, thewhiskeytrip.com. If you want to reach out to me about a distillery in your backyard, a craft distillery, even a giant distillery, I'll have them all on. I'll tell their story. Mike at thewhiskeytrip.com. It's that easy. Send me an email. Tell me about the distillery. I'll check them out. Not everybody makes the cut, but the size of the distillery doesn't matter. It's the story behind the distillery that matters to me, and the people that are there in that community. And I want to tell that story. So come take the ride with Old Big Chief. I really appreciate it. Now, if you're listening to me, I know you're going to listen to Matt and Mark and the whole crew from the Bourbon Life podcast. If you like what they're saying, you like what I'm saying, hell yes, you like what I'm saying, because I'm the Big Chief, baby. I tell it like it is. But If you like what I'm talking about and what my guests are talking about and the stories that we're telling, then what I want you to do is write that 5-star review and put some comments on Apple Podcasts on the Bourbon Life, or hell, go to my Facebook page and leave me a review there. That review opens up those distilleries like Dancing Goat Distillery and gets great guests on my show like Nicholas and Tom. It matters to me that I get those guests on this show and tell their stories so that future generations can look back and say, man, look at this story right here. Could you imagine if Jacob Beam was on a podcast? That's what I want to be one of these days. So folks, I really appreciate it. I got some great shows coming up. You know, I'm putting in the work, putting in the effort, but I appreciate your support. Appreciate you putting in for these giveaways. Not everybody can win, but I try my hardest. What I forgot to say is I don't use a randomizer. I know a lot of people have heartache with that, but I actually pick the winner myself. I don't let a machine pick it. I pick the person that's been taking that ride with me, that's putting in the effort, that shows me that they want to hang out with these distillers, that they want to drink their whiskey. That's important to me. Watch next week. If you haven't seen the Chief's Pour where I'm reviewing whiskey, check out those episodes. Are a little shorter than these ones. I really appreciate it. This is Old Big Chief, and thanks for taking this ride with me, baby.
Thanks to our sponsors, the Heritage Flag Company and Guardian Coins, for making this episode possible. Thanks to Dancing Goat Distillery for sharing their whiskey and story. Cheers.